Good evening. Good to see all of you, or some of you anyway. We're going to begin our class again with a recitation of the Heart Sutra. I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention last time that it was tradition at Sera Monastery that there were various length recitations when the monks in assembly would recite the Heart Sutra when they were in Tibet, in Lhasa. The longest version, one of my teachers, Geshe Jampa Gyatso, used to say is that the monks would be able to, someone would be able to leave Sera, walk into Lhasa, which if you've been to Sera in India, I don't know if anyone has, was a long walk. What is it, Paul? How many miles? Sera to like 9 miles or something, or 6 miles or something. They'd be able to walk into Sera, walk along the big circumambulation around the city, and come back to Sera before the recitation was finished. So you can imagine it doesn't take us that long. So that they were meditating on every word. Then on the other hand, like if you go to the monastery sometimes and there's recitation of the Heart Sutra, they recite it so fast that you can barely keep up. You know, it's just like, and nothing flat. So there are various reasons for that, but we're going to recite it at a more moderate pace again as a prelude to our class on the practice of emptiness again tonight. So Sunny, if you'd like to put up the text, there we go. If you'd like to recite along with me, you can, or if you'd like to just read or think about it, even if you don't want to read. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharidvati Putra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. Therefore, there is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tadyata gate gate para gate parasam gate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharidvati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Thank you. So, good evening. We're going to continue our talk on the commentary on the wisdom chapter of a text written by the fifth Dalai Lama that we mentioned last time. The text is called the Sacred Words of Manjushri. And let's start off without saying prayers, just start off with a moment with a very strong motivation, Mahayana motivation. I think that I'm going to listen to the teachings, not just to accumulate knowledge, not to, so that I can be the brightest person in the cocktail party quoting snippets of knowledge, but whatever I listen to as a means to develop my mind in the path of renunciation, bodhichitta, and the right view of emptiness, with the aim of eventually achieving enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, a state in which I can effortlessly and spontaneously, perfectly lead all sentient beings out of suffering and eventually place them into that same state of enlightenment. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings. Okay, so we have a nice assortment of friends from Washington State to South Australia to Germany, and probably some other places in between that I don't know. So any questions remaining from last time? Any burning question that someone has? Okay. So I'm going to begin a little review of what we said about last time. In the text that you have, the PDF, which is available on the website, we talked about a consciousness that realizes the meaning of reality is a wisdom cognizing the ultimate emptiness. So that's the main wisdom that we're talking about. We said also that a consciousness skilled at any of the 5 topics of knowledge, which sometimes is called the 5 sciences from ancient Indian point of view, art, which includes crafts, medicine, grammar, reasoning, and inner or Buddhist science is an instance of the wisdom cognizing conventionalities. So a bodhisattva has to be able to train in all of these to be able to benefit sentient beings, especially art and medicine, crafts and medicinal sciences, to be able to help others. And well, all of them, grammar and reasoning, to be able to help others in explaining the Dharma to them and refuting the wrong ideas, expressing how emptiness is established and so forth. And inner science is especially the domain of one's own aim, the Buddhist understanding of the Buddhist path, but also indirectly to be able to explain it correctly to others. There's also a wisdom that knows the impeccable ways of achieving the welfare of sentient beings in this and future lives. When training in these are complete, the perfection of wisdom is fulfilled. So we talked about this stanza from the Prajna Shataka, the 100 verses on emptiness. The root of all seen and unseen virtues is wisdom, because it thus brings about both seen and unseen virtues. Wisdom should be thoroughly comprehended. So extolling one to, to perfect these various kinds of conventional and ultimate wisdom, but particularly here, perhaps it's talking about, in that verse, particularly talking about the wisdom that realizes emptiness. It said in brief, all mundane and supramundane virtues arise in dependence on wisdom. So in the verse, it says all seen and unseen virtues. And in the commentary by the fifth Dalai Lama, it says all mundane and supramundane virtues arise in dependence on wisdom, or they have their root in wisdom. So supramundane means realization of emptiness and the various qualities in a bodhisattva's mind that are held by that wisdom. And mundane virtues refers to also realization of the mundane path. When we talked about last time, the supramundane and the mundane achievement of when one has vipassana that analyzes the ultimate nature of things, or the vipassana, the mundane vipassana that analyzes the benefits of the upper state of mind, like the first form absorption, or the defects of the lower state that one is trying to rise above. Among the many types of wisdom that are resorted, it's important to cultivate the special insight, vipassana, that extinguishes the coarse and subtle afflictions. We talked about the worldly or mundane special insight into the gross and peaceful attributes. Gross meaning, the lower state, the faults of the lower state are gross compared to those that of the upper state that one is trying to achieve. You might wonder whether this is to be sought, and we quoted Ashvaghosha's praise of the praiseworthy. Though beings blinded by ignorance who do not approach your doctrine, talking about the Buddhist doctrine, the Buddha Dharma, they can reach the peak of cyclic existence, which is of the four formless realms, the uppermost one. They will again undergo suffering in cyclic existence. In other words, even if you achieve the mundane highest state in the non-Buddhist path, you have not eliminated the factors that keep you in cyclic existence. And so you will, when that state is over, you will again manifest delusions, even though only thing that's manifest at that time are the afflictions of the peak of cyclic existence if you achieve that state. Non-Buddhists can forsake all the manifest afflictions, so that, in other words, they still have the seeds of those afflictions, which are involved in the realms of nothingness, the next to the highest form realm, and in the lower realms, and attain the consciousness of the peak of cyclic existence. However, they cannot free themselves from cyclic existence. There was a quote from the king of Samadhi Sutra, the Samadhi Raja Sutra. Though they cultivate those concentrations, such as the peak of cyclic existence, they do not destroy the discrimination of self. This is talking about the non-Buddhists. Therefore, the afflictions return and they are thoroughly disturbed, as in the case of the cultivation of the concentration by Udraka. Jeffrey put in his translation Udraka Ramaputra, but the text, the actual Tibetan and Sanskrit just says Udraka, who was, we talked about the two teachers that the Buddha first encountered when he left home, he went to the stupa, cut off his hair, sent back his clothes and jewels to his family in Kapilavastu, and he sought teachers. The first of which was Alara Kalama, we talked about last time, who taught him about the form realm absorptions, and then not realizing that did not lead to a cessation of rebirth, he sought out another famous teacher further afield, closer to the classic Buddhist place of Rajagriha that was mentioned in the Heart Sutra, Udraka. Udraka that he was living was called Udraka Ramaputra, the son of Rama, Udraka Rama, who had been his teacher, or maybe his father, maybe both, like in the Nyingma tradition. Many times the father will pass on the lineage to his son or daughter, and also be their teacher. So it's not clear if Udraka Rama was simply the father of Udraka Ramaputra or his spiritual father. But at any rate, Udraka Ramaputra had not realized the peak of cyclic existence. He knew how to explain it, and he taught that to the Bodhisattva, who was able to achieve it, and subsequently led Udraka Ramaputra to that realization. So when it says in the case of the cultivation of the concentration by Udraka, that means even though Udraka achieved that state, he did not achieve realization of emptiness. And he would eventually, the Buddha prophesied, he would eventually, when his karma finished, he would eventually fall into the lower realms. So we talked about, there was a question, is karma binding, which was taught previously in this book, senseless? And Ashwagosha's Praise of Praiseworthy again said, though followers of your teaching might not have attained the actual first concentration, maybe they've only achieved the preparation of that, or the access meditation, they can cease cyclic existence with the devil staring at them. Or in other words, here I think Jeffrey translated the Maras as devils. So what that means is, although the Bodhisattvas eventually do achieve the first concentration and the other concentrations necessarily to be able to help sentient beings, they don't have to, they can immediately meditate before achieving the mundane vipassana, thinking about, to achieve the higher states of concentration. Having achieved shamatha, they can engage in supramundane vipassana and analyze the meaning of emptiness while the Maras are watching them. So the text continued, if consciousness is not attained through the practice of the perfection of wisdom, if omniscience is not attained through the perfection of wisdom, a being of great capacity would not have any attributes which surpass those of beings of middle capacity. So we talked about this as a mistaken view that doesn't take into account that the Bodhisattvas have a very special accompaniment of their practice of the perfection of wisdom, which is the bodhichitta, which distinguishes them from the lower practitioners. We quoted Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principles of the path, or 3 principal aspects of the path, depending on how you like to translate it. Without the wisdom realizing the way things are, even though you have developed the thought definitely to leave cyclic existence, which is one way of translating renunciation, to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, ngejong, we say in Tibetan. Even though you have renunciation and the altruistic aspiration to highest enlightenment, in other words, bodhicitta, even if you have renunciation, bodhicitta, the root of cyclic existence cannot be cut if you do not have the wisdom realizing emptiness, the way things are. Therefore, make effort in the means of realizing dependent arising, which is an allusion here to the meaning of emptiness, the subtle meaning of dependent arising, not just the dependent arising of cause and effect. The text continued, a being of great capacity not only has bodhicitta, the altruistic aspiration to highest enlightenment, but also cultivates the path of special wisdom in conjunction with his or her bodhicitta. The practice of a being of great capacity, the practices of a being of great capacity are not a partial path like those of being of middle or small capacity. Then there was a question about calm abiding and special insight are included in the practice of a being of middle capacity, because even the hearers and solitary realizers have to develop those. Nagarjuna's 60 stanzas of reasoning, the very final verse of that was mentioned, through this virtue, that was Nagarjuna saying in the final verse, the 60th verse of that text, through this virtue may all beings complete the collections of merit and wisdom and attain the 2 supreme bodies, meaning the Rupakaya, form body, and the Dharmakaya, truth body, which arise from merit and wisdom. So we talked about the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom are things that we have to achieve. Just out of curiosity, does anyone know, is the collection, the meditation on emptiness, is that a collection of merit or a collection of wisdom? Jennifer, what do you think? I can see you pursing your lips like,
I would say collection of wisdom.
Collection of wisdom. So doesn't it also collect merit?
I would think the first 5 perfections collect merit.
So that when one's meditating on emptiness, one doesn't collect merit. That's right, actually. It just is something to think about. So it's said that although the perfection of wisdom, even meditating on directly on wisdom, that is virtuous or virtue, it is not, it is, let's say, gewa in Tibetan, like we say, gewa di, nirdu dag, lama sangye drubirne, or something like that. It is virtue, but it is, that virtue does not collect merit. Generally, we think of virtuous actions as synonymous with meritorious actions, but in this case, they are not the same. So although it's called a virtue, the perfection of wisdom, because it leads you to the end point of nirvana and enlightenment, it does not collect merit. It is not part of it is not accumulating the collection of merit at that point. So in order to achieve Buddhahood, it's necessary to have both the Rupakaya, the form body, and the truth body, the Dharmakaya. And there was a question by Nadine about whether you needed to achieve the Rupakaya. Did you not have to practice Tantra? According to the Sutra path, the Bodhisattva yana, you don't have to practice Tantra. There's even no mention of Tantra generally in the Sutra path. But according to Tantra, even if you practice the Bodhisattva's path for 3 countless 8 great eons, you cannot achieve enlightenment unless you've received empowerment into Tantra. Sometimes a Bodhisattva like Buddha Shakyamuni may have gone all the way to the 10th bhumi on the Bodhisattva path, but at that point, he had to receive an initiation by the Buddhas and practice deity yoga, you might say. So then there was a question based on what are the 2 bodies achieved. Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Vatara says, conventional truths are the means. So generally method and means here are different ways of translating the same thing. Conventional truths are method and ultimate truths arise from the means. They are the, let's say, the goals of the means, and they are ultimate truths are the wisdom. Those who, the ultimate truths, let's say, they are not wisdom. Ultimate truths are emptiness, but the wisdom that realizes them is wisdom. When we talk about method and wisdom, those who do not know the differentiation of these 2 abide on the path, on the bad path of wrong thought. And we talked about, this is where we finished last time, you should know correctly the 2 facets of the Madhyamaka view, the view of objects, conventional truths, appearances. So just to get a general idea, from a Buddhist perspective, from the Prasangika point of view, everything that appears to us, to our senses now, which is not emptiness, is a conventional truth. All of those things are empty of inherent existence. They seem to, however, they seem to be inherently existent. They appear that way, even without us mistakenly conceiving them that way, because of imprints from beginningless time. They appear to our senses as inherently existent. So when appear doesn't mean necessarily only appearance like visual appearance. Sounds appear to our ear consciousness as though they're inherently existent. Odors, tastes, tactile sensations all appear to their respective senses as being inherently existent, although they are not. This is the view of dependent arising, which is the conventional existence of all phenomena, and they're arising without a disordering of cause and effect. And Paul Hackett kindly checked the text, as you remember at the end of the class last time. The Tibetan word here is micholwa. So it's, I think, or maybe Paul mentioned this to me after the class or afterwards, in the sense of when it says all phenomena arise without a disordering of cause and effect. So the different ways of understanding that, you can take that to mean like the 4 facets of karma. Do you know what the 4 facets of karma are? Hillary, do you know the four important points about karma? You guys should learn how to unmute. Okay, that's okay. Lana, do you know the 4 facets of karma?
I should know, but pass.
4. Karma is definite. Karma is expandable. Karma is never lost, not wasted. And there's no way to experience a result without having created the cause. So you could say that if any of those things were to happen, that would be a disordering of cause and effect. Say, for instance, if you were to have created a virtuous action that gave rise to suffering, that would be kind of a disordering or confusion of cause and effect. If you were to have created karma that didn't expand, that actually got smaller by its own accord, it's just sitting there, that would be a disordering of the cause and effect, because cause and effect, once you've created karmic imprints in the mind, they increase in their intensity unless they are destroyed or weakened by confession, regret, and so forth. If you were to experience, if some karma that you created became impotent completely, like wasted, that would be a disordering of the law of cause and effect. And if you were to experience a result without having created the cause, like sometimes something happens to you and you think, oh, I don't deserve this. I didn't create the karma for this. You definitely have created the karma for that sometime in the past. If it were to be the case that you would experience something that you didn't create the karma for, that would be an example of disordering of cause and effect also. We mentioned also the last thing that I think that we talked about last time, the view of ultimate truths. So this statement was saying, you should know correctly the two facets of the Madhyamaka view. So conventional truths and ultimate truths, emptinesses. Here we say emptinesses, plural, because every phenomenon has its own emptiness. The emptiness of my eyeglasses, the emptiness of my iPhone, different eyes, iPhone, eyeglasses. They are different instances of emptiness. So we can say all things are empty. They have their own emptiness. The view of the ultimate truth's emptinesses, this is the understanding of the nature of all phenomena in the sense that all phenomena do not in the least have inherent existence. Like in Lama Tsongkhapa Puja, when we, in the glance meditation on the Lan Rim, when it mentions the ultimate view of Nagarjuna is that there is not even an atom of inherent existence in samsara or nirvana. There's nothing. Even the Buddhas do not inherently exist. Enlightenment does not exist, like in the Heart Sutra that we mentioned also. All of these things are empty of inherent nature, empty. They do not in the least have inherent existence. When you know these two facets, conventional truths and ultimate truths, without error, you amass the collections of merit while practicing on the path through the force of the deeds of giving and so forth, the great force of the deeds, or the force of the great deeds of giving and so forth. Also, you practice these deeds in conjunction with a profound view of emptiness. Thereby, you attain the two bodies. So generally, you alternate between collection of merit and collection of wisdom. It's said in the teachings that there is, in the sutra path, there is they are mutually exclusive, the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom. If it's something is a collection of wisdom, it is not a collection of merit. If it is a collection of merit, it is not a collection of wisdom. The only violation of that is that you find in the practice of Tantra, where it's possible through the practice of Tantra that one mind can collect both merit and wisdom at the same time. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said that's one of the distinguishing factors of Tantra that allow it to, to bring about enlightenment very, very quickly. Thereby you attain the two bodies, a form body, rupakaya, and a truth body, which are the final objects of attainment of beings by beings of great capacity. Therefore, you should first take instruction on practicing the ways of amassing the collections of merit, giving and so forth, patience and so forth, which are the means of attaining the rupakaya, form body. Then you should train in the stages of practice for accumulating the collections of wisdom, which are the means of attaining the truth body. So Ida, you have a question.
Yes, Venerable, thank you.
Yeah.
How does one create unmoving or unfluctuating karma?
So here,
I'm not clear with that.
right. So that's another category. When we talk about karma, we talk about meritorious, non-meritorious, and immovable or unchanging karma. Usually when we talk about karma, we say three types: virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral. Another category of karma is talking about meritorious, non-meritorious, and immovable. What immovable karma means is when, say, for instance, if you have achieved shamatha, access meditation to the first concentration, and you make effort in analyzing the gross nature of the desire realm and the subtle nature, better nature of the first form absorption, in the sense that one is free from all sorts of afflictions, you would have, more pleasant state of mind and so forth. In doing so, you create the karma to be reborn in the form realm. That particular karma cannot be experienced in any other way than rebirth in the first form absorption, first form realm. So for instance, when we talk about immovable karma, you might say the opposite is movable karma. That means if you create most karma that we create, it can ripen in various ways. It can ripen as a rebirth in the hell, let's say virtuous karma, if you create, it can ripen as a cool breeze. It can ripen as, having resources, having pleasant feelings and so forth. But immovable karma can't ripen in any other way than rebirth in that realm that you are, that you've created that karma with respect to. Ida, do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, I have another question. You said that in this mundane path, we're just suppressing the afflictions. We're not getting rid of them. So how do we create enough merit to be reborn? I still don't get how you create that immovable karma where you still have afflictions.
That immovable karma immovable karma is not talking about getting rid of. It's just referring to the fact that karma that you've created, the action of meditating on, let's say, the first form absorption, that cannot ripen in any other way than rebirth in the first form absorption. Or maybe the experiences in that first form absorption also, it can't ripen in any other way. The fact that other than meditation on emptiness, all of these other meditations simply suppress the manifest afflictions. While they're suppressed, you may be in a state in which you seem to be free of them completely, but the imprints of those are still in your mind. The only way to eliminate those seeds in the mind so that they don't become manifest again, let's say the seed of anger in your mind, the only way to get rid of that so that anger will never arise again is by meditating on emptiness. Okay, Paul, you have a clarification?
Actually, it's more of a kind of a follow-up question. If going into those meditative states suppress the sort of negative emotions, it sounds like that might not be a bad thing to start off with, if you could do that and then meditate on emptiness. But
right.
Is there a downside to doing that, or?
Well, as the verse from the praise to the praiseworthy mentioned, or the Samadhi Raja Sutra mentioned, that it's not necessary. If you wanted to, you can achieve those. In fact, the bodhisattvas do indeed achieve those form and formless absorptions, because from those states, they are able to develop the psychic powers, emanating bodies, remembering past lives and future lives and so forth. So the bodhisattvas definitely achieve those along the path. But in terms of getting out of cyclic existence, it's sufficient to simply achieve that access meditation to the first concentration, actual shamatha, fully qualified, tranquil abiding. And from that state, instead of analyzing the gross nature of the desire realm and the subtle nature, the better nature of the first form absorption, with what's called mundane vipassana, to use supramundane vipassana at that point and meditate on emptiness. So there are, as I mentioned the last time, someone remembered Venerable Brahms in Australia, who I mentioned. He had his monastery in, I can't remember where we were in Australia. Anyway, he had a vihara outside the city, and he said that his monks would meditate on these form and formless absorptions. It's sort of like the monks, the monastics, mind candy. What did they talk about? New York, have you ever heard the expression nose candy? Is that something people still say? Sort of like drugs or something that you snort. Mind candy would mean like having a state of mind that's very, very blissful, free of agitation. So they would engage in those for that purpose. But the downside of that is if you were to do it just for that purpose, you leave an imprint in your mind that's contradictory to the Mahayana path. So here, say the Theravadas don't see a downside to that. But from the Mahayana point of view, even the bodhisattvas who are meditating on emptiness, on the high stages, the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th bhumis, they are reminded occasionally by the Buddhas. They are awakened from their concentration on emptiness even, to get out of that state and to again collect accumulate the collection of merit, because simply by meditating on emptiness alone, that will not result in Buddhahood. You have to have both a collection of merit and a collection of wisdom. So just wisdom itself is not enough. In the Tantra path, it's possible that one state of mind, say meditating on the illusory body and clear light and so forth, the pure illusory body, can accumulate both merit and wisdom at the same time. But in general, in the sutra path, one has to both collect merit and wisdom alternatively, and simply remaining in a state that is meditating on the first absorption, one may not even be creating virtue in that time, at that point, virtuous activities. One may be just savoring, which is one of the downsides of those states. One may be just savoring the pleasure of that and wanting to remain in that. Okay, so let me continue on a little bit more.
Thank you.
So now,
thank you, Venerable George.
New material. In general, there are 4 different systems of Buddhist tenets in the superior country of India. So we say the land of the Aryas is how especially the Tibetans referred to India, the superior country of India. So there are 4 different philosophical schools. The Vaibhashika, Sautrantika are different tenet systems that were prominent in what are now considered to be the Theravada, or let's say the Vaibhashika school included especially the Theravada. Sautrantika was a little more subtle than that, but still Hinayana tenets that did not accept that all beings, the general assertion was that some beings exceptional beings like Shakyamuni, Siddhartha would become Buddha, but no one else would practice the Bodhisattva path. There's like, they didn't have the, within their system, explanation of how the Bodhisattvas practice other than mentioning the perfections. So the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika are Hinayana schools. The Chittamatra and Madhyamaka are the schools of the Mahayana. The Chittamatra or mind-only school, and the Madhyamaka or middle way school. There are disagreements in view among them, many disagreements in view, but the Madhyamaka and the Chittamatra systems are widely renowned to be the main systems in terms of Mahayana, for the practice of beings of great capacity. Chittamatra system, do you know which is higher? Alex, which is higher, Chittamatra or Madhyamaka?
Madhyamaka.
Madhyamaka is considered to be highest. And even within the Madhyamaka, there are various variations of that. Two major ones are called the Svatantrika Madhyamaka and the Prasangika Madhyamaka. Among those, the Prasangika is considered to be the zenith, the apex of the views, the correct views. Nagarjuna's precious garland, the Ratnavali. If you happen to have a copy of the text, if you want to check, it's verse 118, says, Buddha knew that because of its profundity, this doctrine was difficult for beings to realize. Therefore, Buddha, the subduer, which is a translation of Muni, like Shakyamuni, right? The Muni, the Buddha, turned away from teaching doctrine. It was difficult for, so that's the verse, and the commentary says, it was difficult for others to comprehend this essential of knowing how to present emptiness and how to present emptiness and cause and effect without contradiction. Very, very difficult if you don't have the right view of emptiness. Therefore, Buddha initially pretended that it was difficult, very difficult for him to assume the task of turning the wheel of Dharma. So in regard to that, I just wanted to mention a little bit. The Buddha, after achieving enlightenment on the Bodhi tree, right? You know this story. Overcoming the Maras, achieving enlightenment, he remained in that area, a couple of days, sitting on the same meditative cushion, and then getting up, walking around, and reveling, taking the aspect of reveling in his realization. And it was initially he took the aspect of thinking that that it was very difficult to explain the Dharma to beings other than, very highly realized beings, because they would misunderstand it. It would be tiresome for him. It wouldn't bring great benefit. So I'll read you a little that I've written down here. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, he retired to an isolated place for 49 days, 7 weeks, it said. So mostly it's in Bodh Gaya, and near the Bodhi tree, maybe the first 7 days right there, and then walking around and so forth. He considered that what he had found would not be accepted by ordinary beings. It's a little bit like, I don't know, today's, like trying to explain about coronavirus or, climate crisis to beings, that they wouldn't accept it. While sitting there in meditation, he was approached by the great gods Brahma, holding a golden wheel with 1,000 spokes, and Indra bearing a white right-turning conch shell. Actually, they had approached the Buddha many times during these 49 days, trying to get him to turn the wheel of Dharma. They sort of intuited maybe the Buddha manifesting, usually someone of a higher state of realization, their mind cannot be accessed by the clairvoyance of someone lower. So Brahma, who is the preeminent being of the highest Brahma realm of the form realm, and Indra, who is the king of the gods of the desire realm, they shouldn't have been able to access the Buddha's mind, but maybe he manifested this in such a way that they could, and also maybe he was even speaking out loud these kind of things. Oh, it would be tiresome for me to teach and so forth because people's wisdom eyes are clouded and so forth. So they came and implored him on various occasions that there were people, that it would be beneficial, that he shouldn't just remain silent. Finally, near the end, Brahma came with a 1,000-spoked Dharma chakra. Generally, when we talk about the Dharma chakra, sometimes you think of the wheel of Dharma having 8 spokes. That is one rendition. But the Brahma came with a 1,000-spoked golden chakra, symbolic of the ultimate truth. And Indra came with a right-turning conch shell. You know about that? Does anyone know the difference between a left and right-turning conch shell? Some people say it should be pronounced conch. I think that's wrong. That rhymes with honk. I think with a U in it, it should be conch. Anyway, the dictionary says both conch and conch. So left-turning conch shell, if you look at it from the top where the spiral comes at the top of the conch shell, is the more predominant one. The right-turning conch shells are much more rare. And even if you go to India today and you go to South India, oh, you have one, Jennifer? You have a right-turning conch shell?
And this is Paul's, and I don't know if my mirror is flipped on Zoom, but it's a returning one.
Right-turning, okay. So that is, its rarity is symbolic of the bodhisattvas. So the right-turning conch shell is sometimes associated in Buddhism with the bodhisattva path, because among the various motivations to achieve higher states, the bodhisattvas are much more rare. So Brahma was holding a Dharma chakra, 1,000-spoked golden chakra. Indra was holding the conch, and they offered them to the Buddha in requesting him to turn the wheel of Dharma. Karen, what do you think?
Well, I have a question that might be a little bit off topic, but with the right turning conch shell, is that why we circumambulate clockwise, or does it have nothing to do with that?
They're peripherally connected, but it's not necessarily. Generally, when you circumambulate a stupa, it's said that your right side should be toward the stupa. So if you do that, if you think about it, you're going clockwise around it with your right side facing the stupa. One of the reasons for that is that the left side, the left hand, the left side of your body is that which you would clean your, after you go to the toilet. And so you would never offer something to someone with your left hand. Mm-hmm. You'd always offer with your right hand. But also there's a tradition in Buddhism to circumambulate the other way, which is considered to be the wisdom, because the right side is connected with method, means. The left side is connected with wisdom. So it is not wrong, but it is generally accepted that one circumambulates clockwise and so forth. While sitting there in meditation, he was approached by the great gods, Brahma holding a golden wheel with 1,000 spokes, and Indra bearing a white turning conch shell. Shells which spiral to the right in a clockwise direction are a rarity and are considered especially sacred. They offered these objects requesting teachings on the holy Dharma, not just for themselves, but for all sentient beings. imploring him in various ways. Oh, Buddha, there are beings whose eyes are only a little bit clouded by the dust of ignorance. So please consider this. So the Buddha sort of listened, and then he's looked like he didn't want to accept, and listened, and subsequent requests. They requested at least 3 times, which maybe the Buddha's hesitancy also had to do with the fact that he considered important that people be sincere in their requests. So generally, when we request teachings, we request them 3 times and so forth. Buddha said that he would turn the wheel of the Dharma in 3 stages. So the initial turning of the wheel, the middling turning of the wheel, and the last turning of the wheel. Just then, 2 deer emerged from the nearby forest when Brahma and Indra had requested him, and he accepted. 2 deer emerged from the nearby forest and gazed directly at the wheel that Brahma was offering. To commemorate this, directly at the wheel, to commemorate this first turning of the wheel, a Dharma wheel and a pair of deer, male and female, sit upon every Buddhist temple and monastery. Yeah, I think even in the Theravada tradition, the picture with the Dharma chakra on the top of the roof of the entryway of the monastery. There's a Dharma chakra with 2 animals, like deer, gazing up at the wheel. The wheel symbolizes the Buddha's teachings, and the deer representing Brahma and Indra, the students. The stance of the deer is also significant in that their turned faces, their faces are looking up, symbolize listening, their attentive gaze, reflection, and their reaching meditation, posture of meditation. Okay, I just thought I would mention that to you here. So Buddha knew that because of its profundity, this doctrine was difficult for beings to realize. Therefore, the Buddha, the subduer, turned away from teaching doctrine at first, initially. It was difficult for others to comprehend this essential of knowing how to present emptiness and cause and effect without contradiction. Therefore, Buddha initially pretended that it was difficult, very difficult for him to assume the task of turning the wheel of Dharma. So Diana, you have a question. Hey.
Thank you. You may have just alluded to the answer. I find myself having difficulty believing that the Buddha failed to do something for sentient beings because it was tiresome.
Right. So that's the understanding here. Say, for instance, also there's a famous quandary about there were 14 questions that were renowned as the 14 unanswered questions that pundits proposed to the Buddha. Did the Tathagata exist after, achieving enlightenment? Did he not exist? Was he reborn? Was he not reborn? And so different kinds of things like this. And the Buddha remained silent. So some people said in a situation like that, oh, the Buddha didn't know. This is an indication the Buddha didn't know. Same thing here. The Buddha had a particular intention in that. What do we say? An ulterior motive, not ulterior motive in the negative sense, like, someone having an ulterior motive to give you something, like they want to receive something in return. But the Buddha had a hidden meaning in not responding to these, because he knew that the people, without more explanation, without more context, would not understand his answers. Also here, the Buddha pretended, as it said somewhere here, therefore the Buddha initially pretended that it was difficult, very difficult for him to assume the task of turning the wheel of Dharma. His purpose in doing so was to indicate that it was very difficult to explain this and that one had to be prepared and so forth. It wasn't as though he had any hesitancy or that he even thought he might not. He definitely knew, the omniscient mind knew already what was going to happen in the future. He was going to turn the wheel of Dharma, but he pretended this also to have, to be requested to turn the wheel of Dharma, which set a precedent for the future also in requesting teachings. So it was not as though the Buddha had any sort of laziness or like lack of compassion or something. All of his 3 countless great eons of achieving merit to achieve Buddhahood was always done with that bodhicitta motivation, giving himself for others and so forth. So there was that was just having an ulterior motive in presenting that to the world, taking that aspect.
I assumed it was some kind of skillful means.
Yeah.
Until a few lines later, when the word pretended came up, it made more sense. It didn't make sense to me that that description would have been in there, that it would have been described as a reason for not doing it, that it would have been tiresome for him to teach.
Right.
It seems sort of disrespectful or
in the Lalita
misleading or
Vistara,
something.
the Lalita Vistara, which is a great text about the Buddha's deeds, the 12 deeds in the life of the Buddha, starting from when he was regent in Tushita heaven to taking, to scanning the earth where he should be reborn and everything. All of these he already knew, but he took the aspect, even for the high-level bodhisattvas, of he asked some of the bodhisattvas to come to earth and see where he should be reborn, where was a proper womb and so forth. He already knew beforehand what would happen, but he took these aspects for people to accumulate merit and so forth. In the Lalita Vistara, it also mentions once he'd achieved enlightenment, he took this aspect of thinking, maybe saying out loud so that Brahma and Indra and others could hear, it would be tiresome to do this. It is very difficult. So this was also alluding to the fact, leaving an imprint in people's minds that the correct presentation of a non-contradictory presentation of emptiness and conventional truths is very, very difficult. So already that was kind of a teaching, right? Just by him taking this aspect, also to set up the precedent of being requested and so forth. The teacher of this difficult essential, that means the essential that there is a way of presenting emptiness without contravening the understanding of conventional reality. There's a way of presenting conventional reality without contradicting emptiness. The teacher of this difficult essential without error is the glorious protector, the superior, or Arya Nagarjuna. You've heard of Nagarjuna already. We've mentioned him as an author. Nagarjuna took the aspect of being born maybe 400, 500 years after the Buddha's parinirvana. When the Mahayana teachings that the Buddha initially had given had sort of been disappeared from popular practice. Generally, after the Buddha achieved enlightenment, passed into parinirvana rather, the Theravada was, or the practice of the hearers and solitary realizers, the Hinayana, was the predominant teaching that existed. The Bodhisattvas still practiced in secret, those who were on the Mahayana path, but it was not the right time then, maybe like now, again, like when I talk about climate change or, COVID or something, the general tendency of people was to want to achieve nirvana. It was much easier. Their mindsets were not in general conducive to spending a long period of time for the welfare of others. So Nagarjuna was born with intention, some 400, 500 years after the Buddha, with the intention of re-emerging into the world the practice of the Mahayana, the Buddhist teachings about emptiness. The superior Nagarjuna, who was prophesized by the conqueror Buddha, conqueror is another way of referring to Buddha, right? The conqueror. He was prophesized in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. Oh, he was prophesized in several other sutras also. The Buddha said that there would be someone named Naga who would come and re-illuminate his teachings about emptiness, the Mahayana path. So it was oftentimes historians, they might say that Nagarjuna wrote the Prajnaparamita Sutras or so forth. That's from a Buddhist point of view, that's not the case. The Buddha taught the Prajnaparamita, all of these Mahayana sutras, during his lifetime, but their preservation was became under the, under the, can't remember the word, under the curtain or something like this. They became, bodhisattvas would practice more or less in secret. The Prajnaparamita Sutra, the large Prajnaparamita Sutra, was even transported to mystic realm of the Nagas, where Nagarjuna retrieved it during his lifetime. So he was prophesized by the Buddha in the Descent into Lanka Sutra. Though there are many who claim to follow Nagarjuna, so usually the Madhyamakas, the Svatantrika Madhyamakas also claim to follow Nagarjuna. Though there are many who claim to follow Nagarjuna, there is no chance of attaining even liberation from cyclic existence, even by means of the view of the Svatantrika Madhyamikas, who assert that conventionally all phenomena exist inherently. So there's a subtle point here. Those of you who studied with us the tenets classes before, remember that from a Svatantrika Madhyamaka point of view, they said all phenomena are empty of true existence, but conventionally they still are findable. They're inherent, they have an inherent kind of existence. The highest Madhyamaka view, the Prasangika, says, that's not the case. There is no inherent existence at all. There's not even an atom, the slightest amount of inherent existence in samsara or nirvana. So though there are many who claim to follow Nagarjuna, such as the Svatantrikas, there's no chance of attaining even liberation from cyclic existence, even by means of that view that asserts that all phenomena exist inherently on the conventional level, that ultimately they're empty, but conventionally they're inherent existence. That from a Buddhist point of view, from the Prasangika point of view, that holding that view would not allow one to even achieve nirvana or liberation from cyclic existence. Therefore, the glorious Chandrakirti, you've heard of Chandrakirti, right? Chandra, what does Chandra mean? Anyone know? Lana, you know?
Moon.
Yeah, moon. Chandrakirti means famous moon or renowned moon or something like that. Chandrakirti. Oh, by the way, I meant to mention earlier, I don't see here Shanka, one of our members from our classes at Tibetan Buddhist the last couple of months when we talked about tenets and so forth. The word for conch in Sanskrit is Shanka. So I hoped he was here. I could have said, I hope, Shanka, you're a right-turning Shanka, like Bodhisattva, not the common left-turning Shanka. Shanka is a Sanskrit word for conch. So Chandra means moon. So Chandrakirti was maybe direct, probably indirect disciple of Nagarjuna, lived several hundred years, couple of hundred years after Nagarjuna. Maybe if Nagarjuna continued to live for a very long age, maybe Chandrakirti actually studied with him. But it's said that Chandrakirti was a 10th level bodhisattva who Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa that Chandrakirti was a 10th level bodhisattva who took birth consciously in order to overcome the wrong views of Nagarjuna's teachings, which had just presented the correct view of emptiness in Nagarjuna's famous treatises on emptiness and so forth. So Chandrakirti wrote two different commentaries to Nagarjuna's text on emptiness, the main text, the fundamental wisdom, Prajna Mula. Have you heard of that text, Prajna Mula? Do you know what Mula means, anyone? Mula means root. In Bodh Gaya, the FPMT has a center out in the, couple of miles from the stupa called Root Institute. And I remember when the director of the center at the time, Kabir Saxena, you remember Kabir, John, from Manjushri? Kabir was the director. And he used to tell me that when he would go to the rickshaw drivers and they, who didn't speak English, they say, "Where do you want to go?" in Hindi, and he'd say, "Mula," meaning root institute. So they knew the word. So Prajna Mula means the root of wisdom, the text that, the main text that everything else is based on that Nagarjuna wrote. He wrote many other treatises on emptiness, but Chandrakirti wrote two commentaries on that. One was a word commentary explaining every single word in order through the text, called the Prasana Pada, clearly worded. And another text was called the meaning commentary, which didn't necessarily go through every verse in order, but gave the gist, the meaning of that. That's called the Madhyamaka Avatara, or entry into the middle way, or as Jeffrey translates it, supplement to the middle way. So therefore, the glorious Chandrakirti says in his supplement, this is in the 6th chapter on emptiness, verse 79, if you happen to have it, for those who are outside the path of the honorable teacher Nagarjuna, the venerable teacher Nagarjuna, anyone who's not on that path, who's outside of that path, there is no means of extinguishing suffering. In other words, there's no way of achieving even nirvana. They have fallen from conventional truths and from ultimate truths. Because of falling from these two, they do not achieve liberation. So this is one of the bases for Lama Tsongkhapa's assertion that even the Hinayana Arhats, Arya beings who meditate and want to achieve liberation, they have to eventually understand the subtle meaning of emptiness that's presented by the Prasangika, that there's not even an atom of inherent existence and cyclic existence or nirvana. So the text continues, hence it is necessary to comprehend without error the thought of the protector Nagarjuna. Okay, we get, so Nagarjuna was prophesized at the time of the Buddha in many sutras. He actually existed in the world and opened up the Mahayana path again, especially the Madhyamaka path. It said that also Asanga, who was a Mahayanist, was born sometime after Nagarjuna, opened up the Mahayana path of the Chittamatra, especially the Yogacara. But the Madhyamaka was particularly presented by Nagarjuna. So then, obvious question, what commentator of Nagarjuna should be followed? In other words, if you try to read Nagarjuna's texts themselves, they're very dense, right? Very difficult to comprehend, like difficult to digest some kind of very, nutritious food or something like that. Difficult to understand the meanings. So one has to depend on some commentary to that. So who should be followed? What commentator of Nagarjuna should be followed? The great elder Atisha, you know who Atisha was, the great Indian teacher who came to Tibet at the request of the Tibetan king in order to eliminate wrong views about Buddhism in Tibet at that time when Buddhism had begun to descend. He was a great pundit. He was one of the gatekeepers at one of the great monasteries of India. That the four gates would be where people would be, Buddhist pundits would be there to question people who were entering to make sure that they weren't coming with ulterior motives. So they would ask them about Buddhist tenets and so forth. So Atisha said in his text, and I guess I have another, oh yeah, this text, I have to get the other version here. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So in his text called the Two Truths, Satya Dhyana Vatara, some of you may have access to that if you're studying Buddhism and so forth. This famous text that Atisha wrote on the Two Truths. So in verses 15 and 16, A and B, he said, through whom is emptiness realized? This is Atisha sort of asking, asking the question, answering it himself. Through Chandrakirti, a student of the prophesized Nagarjuna, who saw the truth, the nature of phenomena. Through the precepts transmitted from Chandrakirti, the truth, the nature of phenomena will be realized. So even though the fifth Dalai Lama who wrote this text was a Gelugpa, and he could have said, Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelugpa tradition, that Chandrakirti was the perfect commentator. Still, he's going back earlier to Atisha, who's accepted by all of the other schools also, who might have doubts about Lama Tsongkhapa, right? So that he says, you should practice in accordance with the commentaries of the glorious Chandrakirti. So although he wrote several commentaries, the two commentaries, the Prasana Pada, which is a word commentary on the root of wisdom or fundamental wisdom, Mula Prajna. And he wrote this meaning commentary, the Madhyamaka Avatara, like entering into the middle way. He also wrote commentaries on Aryadeva's 400 stanzas of the deeds of bodhisattvas and so forth. Wrote other commentaries. Chandrakirti's commentary, here is mentioning it immediately, Chandrakirti's commentary on Aryadeva's 400 stanzas of the yogic deeds of bodhisattvas. I don't have the text right next to me there, but there's a very good translation of that by Ruth Sonam with the commentary of Geshe Sonam Rinchen that is very accessible. But I think it's still available from Snowline. So so Aryadeva wrote the 400 stanzas, sometimes just called the 400. Aryadeva was a disciple of Nagarjuna. Maybe you remember me mentioning last time about Aryadeva being called to South India, called from South India to Nalanda to debate with this Ashvaghosha or Aryasura, who was a Hindu at the time, and he was able to defeat him in that debate. So Aryadeva wrote the 400 stanzas. He was a disciple of Nagarjuna, actually present. Nagarjuna was his guru in human life and sort of, caretaker and so forth. And he wrote this text, the 400 stanzas, as a meaning commentary also on fundamental wisdom. But here, that commentary, that text, the 400 stanzas, is also difficult to understand. So there are commentaries to that. So Chandrakirti's commentary to that says, here, self when we talk about selflessness. Here, self, in the theory of selflessness, is a nature or entity of things which does not depend on others, does not depend on another. So it's a theoretical nature. That is to say, it's not a nature that actually exists. It's something that our minds conceive of, a self. One has to distinguish here. There is a self that does exist, but here when it's saying self, when you talk about selflessness, what self is being that is less, that you are lacking? It's this conceptual idea of a self which does not depend on anything else, that is independent, that exists just from its own side. Here, self, in the theory of selflessness, is a nature or entity of things which does not depend on another. Its non-existence is selflessness. So this self, which is conceived by us, that appears to us and we believe in, seems to be something that exists by itself without depending on anything else. That self does not actually exist. It appears, like say, a magician's illusion of an elephant in a room. That the appearance exists to the audience. There's some kind of apprehension by them that they fear that they're going to be trampled by the elephant or something, but there is not an actual elephant there. So it's a little bit like that. Its non-existence is selflessness. So the non-existence of this appearance to our mind of a nature that does not exist on anything else, a svabhava. You know this mantra, if you do tantric sadhanas, you say, Om svabhava shuddha sarva dharma, svabhava shuddho aham. You know, there is all phenomena, Om svabhava shuddha sarva dharma, all dharmas, sarva dharma, are free of svabhava, this kind of svabhava, this kind of self. And I, aham, is also free of any svabhava. There's no selflessness of phenomena, there's no selflessness of the person. Here, self in the theory of selflessness is a nature or entity of things which does not depend on another. Its non-existence is selflessness. Selflessness is realized as twofold through a division into persons and other phenomena. So generally in Hinayana tradition, in the Theravada treatises, generally they talk about selflessness of persons, but there is not an elaboration of selflessness of phenomena. They talk about that it's sufficient to realize the selflessness of persons, but phenomena itself, other than the person, like my computer or the tree or the house or whatever, they do exist really. As say, for instance, the body, my form aggregate, is a basis for imputing the I. You know, you can say George exists when you see the body, but that the body but that the person that you imagine, the self that you imagine inhabiting your body, that seems to be independent and so forth, partless, independent, permanent, and so forth. That self does not exist at all. So they talk about selflessness of the person, but not selflessness of phenomena, that the phenomena of the body and so forth do exist. So here, its non-existence is selflessness. Selflessness is realized as twofold through a division into persons, selflessness of persons, and selflessness of phenomena that are other than persons. Generally, that holds throughout the Mahayana. We talk about selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. When we say selflessness of phenomena, although a person is a phenomenon, it is, when you talk about the pair, selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena, when you talk about phenomena, it means all phenomena other than persons. Okay, makes sense? Person is a phenomenon, but in that duality of selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena, phenomena means all phenomena other than persons. A selflessness of persons and a selflessness of other phenomena. So just a little bit further, what are the stages in realization of the two types of emptiness, these two types of selflessness? Answer, again, Aryadeva's 400 stanzas. If you happen to have the text translated by Ruth Sonam, this is verse 190. It's chapter 8, verse 15 and chapter 8, but because there are close to 400 stanzas, you can just number the stanzas sequentially, so it's verse 190. Initially, the non-meritorious is overcome. Initially, in the beginning. In the middle, self is overcome. And finally, all views are overcome. Whoever knows this is wise. So this is a very famous stanza that's mentioned by many, many commentators. Sometimes they have a different interpretation in Sakya or other traditions, but here the fifth Dalai Lama is interpreting it this way. So it says, initially non-meritorious is overcome. So it says, bad views of no cause and effect and so forth were overcome through the practices explained earlier in the sections on beings of small and middling capacity. Therefore, it is said, again, this is from the 60 stanzas. This is the second verse, the first two lines of the second verse of the 60 stanzas by Nagarjuna. Initially, the source of all evil, nihilism, has been thoroughly overcome. Some of you who took the final exam for mind and mental factors, there's some people who haven't sent in their finals yet, but those of you who, there was a question about what's the worst wrong view. So which is the worst wrong view? So usually we talk about the view of nihilism is the worst, because holding that view that cause and effect does not exist and so forth prevents you from even realizing other aspects of the path. So here it says that the quote from Aryadeva says, initially the non-meritorious is overcome. So what's meant by the non-meritorious means negative actions in general, which are overcome by the practices of the person of beginning and middling scope, but particularly the worst of those, which is the nihilistic view of the when we talk about the 6 delusions. Do you know what the 6 afflictions or delusions are? Sheila, do you know the 6 afflictions? 6 delusions, 6 klesha, the root klesha. Oh, Daniel, do you know the six delusions by any chance? Daniel Rohr in Switzerland? Oh, no, in Italy. Sorry, Daniel, or is that just your picture there? Oh, I see Barb looking at you. You're there. You're okay. Okay. Anyone know what the 6 afflictions are? The 6 root afflictions? Kate McFadden? You don't know? Okay, so we talk about anger, attachment, ignorance. What else?
Jealousy.
Jealousy is not one of the six.
Pride.
Like
Pride,
Pride.
Pride.
pride. And what's
Doubt.
the fifth? Afflicted
Doubt.
doubt. Yeah, not just any doubt, not just like doubting whether Haagen-Dazs is good or not, or something like that. Afflicted doubt. Those are called and there's a sixth affliction, which is called afflicted views. But these first five are called the non-afflicted, the non-views, the non-views. The sixth has five varieties also. So you could say there are 10 afflictions, 10 root afflictions, if you wanted to expand the sixth one into five. One of them is, view of the transitory collection. One of them is a nihilistic view and so forth. So initially, the source of all evil, nihilism, has been thoroughly overcome. Then in the middle, a self of persons is overcome. And finally, a self of other phenomena should be overcome. So the fifth Dalai Lama's commentary on this is this particular take is that this order wherein the selflessness of persons is cultivated before the selflessness of other phenomena is devised in accordance with the precepts of practice. Whereas in the great books on the selflessness of other phenomena, in the great books on emptiness, the great books on in the great books on the selflessness of other phenomena, I think I've left out some words here. In the great books about emptiness, the selflessness of other phenomena appears first. So generally, when you talk about emptiness and selflessness, you talk about the emptiness of other phenomena, the selflessness of the chariot and so forth. And then you talk about the selflessness of persons. But in actual practice, in order to actually have a taste of emptiness, the order of realization is that first you realize the selflessness of the person. In fact, not just any person, yourself. You realize the selflessness of yourself, and then you can branch off into the selflessness, making realization of the selflessness of other phenomena. This non-mistaken order, which, being for practice, is an exception to the general rule that the emptiness of phenomena is explained first. Where is that? This non-mistaken order, which being for practice is an exception to the general rule, is an excellent essential. A view of selflessness cannot be generated in the continuum of a person who does not believe in cause and effect. Say the non-meritorious, remember? And if the conception of a self of persons is not overcome, the conception of a self of other phenomena cannot be overcome. So I'm going to end there because we're just after 8:30. And we're going to do a short dedication of merit. And then I will remain for another, which are like 15, 20 minutes. For those of you who don't have other obligations, if you want to ask questions, clarifications about what we talked about. So Sheila, can you put up the dedication prayer? There we go. Due to the merits, actually, as I mentioned here, it shouldn't be merits. It says Gewa Diyi. Gewa means virtue, because remember, even meditation on emptiness is virtuous, even though it doesn't it doesn't accumulate merit. Due to the virtues of these actions, actually it says Gewa Diyi, due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that very state. So think, during this period this evening and during our life, even in previous lives, we've created virtuous actions which have left imprints in our mind, karmic seeds. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha, the state of a Guru Buddha, and lead as a result of that, may I lead all living beings without exception, friends, enemies, strangers, into that same state. Then the next verse, the special verse of bodhicitta, dedication. May the supreme precious bodhicitta, here it says jewel bodhicitta, precious bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase evermore. So the meaning of this is that although this is not a dedication prayer per se, it's a prayer to develop bodhicitta and often thought of as a dedication prayer. May in my mind stream, probably I've not achieved any realization of bodhicitta at all, but due to these merits, may that which has not been attained, not arisen, the bodhicitta that has not arisen, may it arise and grow, and may that which has arisen, in some minds, some inkling of bodhicitta, not degenerate, may it not diminish, but increase more and more. So thank you. If you have some other obligations, go off. If not, I will remain here for a little bit longer. So anyone have any questions? Or Laura, Lana, you have your hand question? Yeah. Lana? No? Oh, that's a photo. Okay. Oh, that's just your hand. Anyone have any questions or clarifications you'd like? Snehi.
Good evening, Venerable George.
Hi, sister.
My clarification was, on this discussion you were having about wisdom being virtuous but not collecting merit.
Right.
And I wanted to understand that better because I thought, we kind of group it like that, but that merit is generally the things we do to help others, the generosity and so forth. And so I always in my mind thought, yes, wisdom is kind of in its own box, but surely it must also help in, dealing skillfully with other people.
It can, but when you are actually meditating, it said even that listening or hearing, that means reading also about emptiness, thinking about it or contemplating about it, using logic to well understand it, and meditating on it, which includes actually having developed a correct understanding of it through contemplation, and then placing your mind single-pointedly on that. We talk about the wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplating, and meditating. Those are generally, they generally accumulate the collection of wisdom. Although they're dealing with the conventional, especially in hearing and contemplating, using words and so forth, it's still said that they are accumulating the collection of wisdom. And therefore, because of the fact that anything which is a collection of wisdom is necessarily not a collection of merit, they are not collection of merit. Although they certainly, they certainly sustain our ability, they improve our ability to accumulate merit through, realizing that the thing that you're hesitant to give doesn't exist inherently. With that wisdom, that knowledge, or some hint of that, it's more easy to be able to give away, and so forth. So although that meditation on, or say, hearing, thinking, and meditating on emptiness, usually in the monastic textbooks are said to be accumulations of wisdom, and therefore not accumulations of merit. They do sustain and help us create merit through these other things. Does that help? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Someone else have a question? Some of the faces I can't see there.
Venerable George, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes,
This is
definitely.
potential.
Lobsang, I see
So-
the green box around your name there.
Oh, I thought that the meditation on emptiness was a form of purification, or one of the benefits was that it was resulted in purification of negative karma. So I thought that in that sense, maybe it could be understood as a way of accumulating merit.
So when we talk about purification of negative karma, generally we talk about the different words that can be used: confession or so forth, confession of negativities. We talk about the four opponent forces, right?
Mm-hmm.
You all know the four opponent forces. Jai or Jay in South Australia. Do you know the four opponent forces? You still there? Or maybe you're off making a cup of tea. Okay. Christian, I can see. Christian, do you know the four opponent forces? No? Who can I call on here?
Isn't it regret is one of them? Is it the what we use when we purify with Vajrasattva?
Right. So yeah, there are four opponent forces. One of them is regret or remorse. That means thinking, realizing that you've created actions in the past or just a minute ago or right now due to your afflictions, attachment or anger or whatever, and that has generated negative karma, which will be experienced by you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, you'll feel some regret that you've created this cause for your own future suffering, and that sort of regret regrets having done that, because that means that you're going to suffer in the future. In a wider sense, regret is improved upon when you consider the fact that by creating negative karma, you won't be able to help others in the future. You won't be able to make realizations on the path as quickly, and you won't be able to help others in the future. So that's sort of a enlargement of the sense of regret in the Mahayana sense. So regret, then making a determination. What do we talk about? New Year resolution not to do that action again in the future. You could regret what you did in the past, but also you have to make a strong resolution or promise or something like that, not to do it again in the future. That's one of the most important of them, which is sort of the rationale behind taking the vows of a monk or nun or of a layperson, because you make a promise, a resolution not to engage in negativities. That can help to cut the continuity of doing those actions again in the future. So the force of regret or remorse, the force of resolution not to do again in the future. What's the third one? Force of, different orders. You don't have to say, you could say actually the first one would be the force of reliance, which means when you create negative actions, they are either created with respect to sentient beings or with respect to the triple gem. Triple gem, and no sentient beings in triple gem? Isn't the Buddha a sentient being? Paul, is Buddha a sentient being?
No, because the Buddha doesn't have a conventional mind.
Maybe, I hadn't heard that expression. Usually we say the Buddha, that when we say sentient beings, it means mind, having a mind which is still not totally free of all of the
Afflicted,
obstructions and so forth.
Yeah.
So the Buddha is not a sentient being. So you can, if you create negativity with respect to sentient beings, you have to rely on sentient beings to overcome that. So that's said to me, generating bodhichitta is the way to overcome that. With respect to the triple gem, negative karma you created with respect to that, disrespecting your teachers or abandoning the Dharma or criticizing the Arya Sangha and so forth, those kinds of negativities can be purified by taking refuge, again, depending upon them, seeing their qualities and so forth. So the third, or you could say the first, is called the power of the basis. So regret, resolution, bodhicitta, and refuge. And then the last one is called the power of the antidote. That means creating virtuous antidotes as a virtuous karma as antidotes to the negative karma you created. Say, for instance, if you've stolen, you go out of your way, you could do other things also, but you go out of your way, say, to be generous and think that in the future, even if you haven't eliminated all of the negativity of having stolen with the other antidotes, that even if there's some remnant that arises, the virtuous karma that you create is sort of entwined with that, like two kinds of thread, a black and a white thread wound around one another. Even if the black thread ripens by your creating some virtuous karma to counteract that as an antidote, that will ameliorate the situation. Say, for instance, having stolen in the past, maybe in a future life, something of yours will be stolen, but having created some virtuous karma and dedicating that as an antidote, even your thing is stolen, it may be returned by someone else very quickly because of the virtuous karma you created. So meditation on emptiness could be one of those antidotes. And in so doing, that can help to purify that negative karma. Okay, so who would ask that? Lobsang, had you asked that?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't answer completely. Ron, you have a question? Comment?
The relationship between Nagarjuna and the Nagas. Did he supposedly access the texts through the Nagas?
Yeah. So the texts indicate that Nagarjuna realized that the 100,000 verse, I think it was 100,000 verse or 8,000 verse. Paul, do you remember? 100,000 verse had been transported for protection to the Naga realm. So you might say that, one of the states of sentient beings is to be born as a Naga, right? Where are Nagas? What kind of realm is that? Is that a spirit realm, Ron, or what?
I think it's the animal realm.
Yeah, they're actually within the animal realm. So very powerful beings, sort of like the supreme of the animals, more than the Lion King. And they have jewels and possessions and so forth. It's said that the Nagas retrieved the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita and preserved it in the Naga realm. Some people think maybe it actually refers to an area of India, a very remote area of India called Nagaland. Maybe you could say, if you don't believe that Nagas would retrieve the 100,000 verse, maybe it was preserved in some, stupa or something in Nagaland. But anyway, it was not readily available, and Nagarjuna visited the Naga realm or Nagaland, depending on how you'd like to look at it, and retrieved the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita, the longest of the Prajnaparamita sutras, and used that as a basis for explaining again Nagarjuna's the Buddha's view on emptiness. So when we talk about the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita, generally we talk about the three versions of that discourse. There was one discourse that the Buddha gave, in its most abbreviated form, it was preserved in what's called the 8,000 verse, Prajna Paramita, Getongba. And then there is a 20,000 verse, sort of intermediate presentation of that same discourse, more wordy. And then the one that was most verbose, covering the same subjects, was the 100,000 verse. Among them, there's some topics that are not mentioned in all of them, but they're all referring to one particular discourse that the Buddha gave on Rajagriha, in Vulture's Peak, in which different people, for various reasons, remembered the gist, the 8,000, in sort of just the essentials without a lot of repetition of words. The 20,000 verse, which is a little more elaborate, 100,000 verse is more elaborate. So the Nagarjuna retrieved that and from the Naga realm. Does that help, Ron?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jennifer. There you go.
Thank you, Venerable George. I had a question regarding an understanding of cause and effect being a prerequisite for understanding the selflessness of phenomena and persons.
Right.
So would cause and effect, does that refer to karma? And if so, if karma is an extremely hidden phenomenon, how would one actually come to understand, cause and effect first and really have faith that that it's valid?
Right. So various facets of that. So generally, when it's said in the Buddhist scriptures, it doesn't say, well, sometimes it says gyude, but meaning cause and effect. Usually it says lede, which means karma and result, karma and its results. So when we talk about the law of cause and effect here, without understanding the law of cause and effect on this mental, in this mental sense, karma, it's not talking about Newton's, third law of motion, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, billiard balls and rockets, and all of the examples that from high school physics. If you're on the skating rink and you push someone, you're both on skates without much friction, you push someone, you also go back for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Here it's talking about more in the sense of what Christ talked about supposedly in his teachings, that you reap what you sow. Whatever action you create will eventually will ripen on yourself sometime in the future, not necessarily now, maybe sometime in the distant future. So when we talk about cause and effect, it's talking about karma, and karma, which is the cause. You create an action. Karma actually means action, right? Karma and its result. So that's what's meant by that. Without an understanding of that, it's said it's very difficult to let's say understand, not just an understanding of that, but some kind of faith and deep belief in that. It's very difficult to realize selflessness, and there are various reasons for that. If you don't have a belief in the law of cause and effect, you're going to, meaning karma and its effect, you're going to create negative actions. You're not going to think anything about it, and that will be an impediment to making realizations. There are many other facets of that also, I think, but let's say that's one important factor, that if you don't have a belief in karma and its results, you're going to be counterproductive. You're going to create negative actions, which will prevent you, will create obstacles to you making realizations. So generally, in order to make realizations, such as a realization of emptiness, you have to have an accumulation of merit, which acts as a cooperative cause to make those realizations. So sometimes when you can't make realizations, sometimes if your mind is completely bananas, you try to accumulate merit. Maybe you offer the mandala many, many times to the guru, the whole universe, to create virtuous karma, thereby creating virtuous karma, which acts as a support to make the realizations. Also, if you've created negative karma, like breaking your vows, pratimoksha vows, or the vows of a monk or nun, that can become an impediment to making realizations. I remember Song Rinpoche explained, the great Tibetan teacher Song Rinpoche, who was Lama Yeshe's guru, Lama Zopa's guru. I don't know. Anyone here study with Song Rinpoche? Okay, no. So Song Rinpoche mentioned once that in the time of the Buddha, some of the monks were having difficulty keeping, memorizing texts, making realizations, and they had been violating their vows. They were going swimming and things like this in contradiction to their vows. So the Buddha told Shariputra to have them do the bi-monthly confession. And upon doing that, after having confessed their negativities, they were able to again make some progress in their realizations. So it works both ways. Accumulating merit acts as a support to making realizations, and purifying negative karma acts as a support to making realizations also. It was so long-winded there, I may have missed the gist of, was there some other part there, Jennifer?
Oh, no, thank you. I guess the part is, if it's hard for people to really believe in karma without faith, because I've heard that it's an extremely hidden phenomenon, even before. Yeah.
So first of all, karma is not a hidden phenomena. Karma, actually, it's said in the scriptures, through giving resources, through morality, high status, and so forth, in one of Nagarjuna's verses, meaning that one can realize that with clairvoyance, that through giving you'll get what you'll reap what you sow in the future. By negative actions, you'll experience suffering in the future. What is a deeply hidden phenomena is the direct connection between one action and its particular ripening. So when the Buddha said, when someone offered a loaf of bread, some very poor couple who didn't have very much, all they had was a little teeny piece of morsel of bread they offered to the Buddha, and the Buddha prophesied that in the future they would become a pratika Buddha in this certain world, and a certain world system at a certain time, and other people would doubt. How could he know that? You know, that particular connection. Generally, generosity it's not a hidden phenomenon to know that generosity will bring about resources in the future, that something will come back. If you give, that you will receive. But what is the deeply hidden phenomena is the particular connection between one act and its particular result. Okay, how one develops confidence in the law of cause and effect. So there were three subtle parts to your question, a very good question. Dharmakirti, in his teachings about logic and so forth, said that once one has an insight into the Buddha's teachings on emptiness, let's say selflessness, so profound, so shattering, so different, that no other religious system taught. Once you have a realization of that, an appreciation of that, you would develop confidence in other teachings that the Buddha gave about conventional things like the law of cause and effect, past and future lives, and so forth. Because if the Buddha realized this incredibly subtle phenomena, why would he lie about karma? Why would he make this up? Or, so one develops a confidence in the law of cause and effect eventually through having some insight into emptiness, some confidence that, maybe in your own experience, when you're able to have a little bit of feeling of the selflessness of the person and realize that you don't have to get angry, that you don't have to follow attachment. One of my Buddhist teachers said when I felt particularly miserable, said, don't need unhappy mind, right? We don't need to be unhappy. If you realize the selflessness of persons, you can overcome that. And that kind of insight brings unshakable confidence in the Buddhist other teachings about conventional things. It's not to say that that's the only way that you can develop confidence in the law of cause and effect. You can see it in many, many kinds of examples in our worldly life. As you meditate on it, it becomes more and more convincing to you. But that sort of like the unshakable faith in the law of cause and effect evolves from kind of an experience of the Buddhist teachings about emptiness. Okay. Diana, you have a question or a comment?
You came to the line, the source of all evil, nihilism. And then you started talking about the 6 or the 10 root afflictions. And I think I can kind of infer what the connection is, but it was not made explicit. And I'm also interested that it lists, if this translation is accurate, a single source of all evil. That's a very heavy thing to lay on it.
Where is the single source?
The source of all evil, just because that is grammatically the single form, not sources or a source or one source, the source.
Right. Well, you could say that the fundamental source of negativity is non-recognition of the law of cause and effect, and so forth. I take your point. Maybe it would be better. The text, usually in Tibetan grammar, Sanskrit grammar, there's a particular particle that would indicate you can give me the correct grammatical term, a or the. What is a? What kind of pronoun is a?
Definite and indefinite articles.
Article, not pronoun, article. Definite, the, maybe indefinite a might be better here understood. But when you talk about all evil, the source of every type of evil, if you think of it from that word, from that point of view of all, that would be the sense of nihilism, the view of a nihilistic view that doesn't accept the existence of cause and effect. I'll leave it at that for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
Someone else have a question before we end? Nadine, how are you doing? Do you have any questions there? What is it where you are? 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock?
Yes, 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nadine is recovering a little bit from some COVID, I think, and was dozing off last time. So thanks also to Snehi, to whoever provided the recording up on YouTube. A couple people listened to that. I noticed there were like 100 people that had already watched the video from last time. So thank you very much.
Sorry.
Okay, another question.
So, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
You know, when you were talking about the 4 aspects of karma, and you said one of them is that karma is expandable.
Yes.
It increases in intensity, and I'm assuming that's for both good and bad karma.
Yes. Yes.
And I've never quite followed that reasoning. Why is any action I do magnified over time if I don't do it again? Like, is that also magnified?
I'm not sure what you mean. If you don't do it again, if you
So
restrain from
what,
negativity.
so what I thought what expandable karma meant is that, let's say I kill someone, which is, you know, the usual thing. Like I kill someone, I feel, and I don't, you know, kill anybody again. Does that karma still expand? Like I don't understand, I guess, what expandable karma means.
Yeah, it still expands. So a little bit like using worldly analogies that don't necessarily fit perfectly, but say, for instance, when you plant a seed, the seed, if it's in ground which is fertile and there are other conditions, it doesn't remain as a seed in that seed form continually. It starts to maybe put out a little, what do they call it, before the sprout
Shoots.
comes?
Yeah. Little shoot.
Little shoot, yeah, even before, you know, as the shell starts to open, something starts to come out and a little shoot comes up. So in analogy to that, the karmic seeds that are placed in one's mind simply by being there, and sometimes because of our negative states of mind that are similar to the cause of that karma originally. Say if we created, if we killed some animal or something out of anger or out of attachment, let's say you went hunting to get you know, some good food, some around here in North Carolina, deer hunting or whatever. So you did it partially out of attachment. Certainly attachment is part of it. Then other states of mind of attachment can cause that seed also to be prepped, you know, to instigate its growth and so forth. Also, another analogy that's sometimes used, like in a valley, you plant one seed, you know, the old Johnny Appleseed. You know the story of Johnny Appleseed? Johnny Appleseed, some mythical character. I don't know, there are probably many people like this. They go to a valley, they plant one apple seed in the valley, which is just maybe pasture, and then that creates a tree, the apples fall, the seeds of those give rise to other trees, and 30 years later, 40 years later, when they come back, the whole valley is filled with apple trees. So various kinds of analogies to the expandability of karma. They may not all fit exactly, but in general, it's said that karmic seeds do not remain totally dormant. They would remain relatively dormant if we didn't instigate them with, what do I say, what's the word? Another word I would say, activate them, cause them to be increased due to our similar kind of delusions. If we were to have a mind that was free of afflictions, very much, you know, we're very, very calm, those karmic seeds are not going to increase as much. Say, for instance, at the time of death, right, there you go, there's at the time of death, it's said that the karmic seed that will determine one's next rebirth is going to be ripened more quickly at that time due to the state of mind that one has at that time. So it's said to be very important to watch your mind at the time of death. So that also is similar to that kind of increasing quality of the karmic seed due to, what do I want to say, instigating it and
Triggered, like the word that comes to mind, like everything you're saying makes me understand that if I plant stuff that can get triggered by any external condition, especially if it's non-virtuous, then I have to be so careful. Right.
So virtuous karmic seeds also increase in their intensity. If you create a virtuous action, you shouldn't think, oh, that'll be why did I do that? No one's going to remember that I did that. That karmic seed will definitely increase over time. I remember once in India, when the Inji Sangha, the Western Sangha, were living together. This was probably 1977 or something like that. We had received teachings, tantric teachings and initiations from Song Rinpoche, from Serkon Rinpoche, Serkon Senchab Rinpoche. And we all needed to have our visas extended. You know, in India at the time, you couldn't just stay continuously. So someone had to, we made some kind of deal with the visa authorities that if someone brought in the passports, they could be all stamped, even if not all the people were there, if one person brought them in. So I'm not sure if it was I volunteered or I got burdened with it. So I was going to go to I don't know, some Jammu or someplace where there was a visa official who would do that with all the Sangha's visas. I had to miss the teachings. And I remember going down the hill and Dr. Nick Ribish calling out to me, he said, George, don't forget, you know, karma is never lost, you know. So that kind of, you know, you create a virtuous action, it won't remain dormant. It will definitely over time increase, and you will experience some great benefits from it in the future. So
Thank you so much. That was such a great, clear explanation.
Okay, one last question from Jackie Fan. What is it, Jackie?
Hello, Venerable. I just would like to ask you for, if I understand it correctly, when you said that, is that the appearance of selflessness of all the phenomena come first, and then the appearance of selflessness of a person that comes afterward. But in practice, one realizes selflessness of oneself, and then later on realizing the selflessness of phenomena.
Not exactly. It's not that the appearance of selflessness of phenomena appears first. It's said that in the treatises that explain selflessness in the Mahayana, say emptiness, usually what is presented first is the emptiness or selflessness of phenomena, then the selflessness of persons. They are both the same level of subtlety. There's not one that is grosser than the other. But in terms of actual experience, realizing or having an insight into them, generally one has the first experience of emptiness or selflessness with regard to the selflessness of persons, in particular, the selflessness of oneself. Say, for instance, of the 5 afflicted views, we said there were 5 non-views, you know, anger, attachment, ignorance, pride, and afflicted doubt. And then there were 5 afflicted views. The first of those afflicted views is the view of the transitory collection. Those who did our tenets course will remember that view of the transitory collection. What that means is that your own mind apprehends the appearance of a self-identity that's not your body, not your mind, but is something that seems to be there in the core of your mind, especially when you're irritated. If someone says, Jackie, you're a thief, you know that you didn't steal something, and you think, I didn't steal anything. The I that's there is not, you don't identify the I as your body or your mind. It's some other kind of thing that depends on the body and mind, but seems to be there, that your mind is believing in. There's an appearance of that I. And we'll go into this more the next time. This is a very topic that we're going to get into. Identifying the object of negation. There seems to be an I that appears to the mind. I say there seems to be, that there is an I that appears to the mind that doesn't depend on anything else. That seems to be inherently existent. So the first taste of emptiness usually comes about through an experience of the emptiness of that, the selflessness of that, because it's most easily recognizable. Even to recognize the object of negation of personal selflessness, one's own selflessness, to recognize that object is very, very difficult. So you can imagine to recognize, what does it actually mean that this mug seems to be inherently existent? That's a little more difficult. If you have an experience of personal selflessness, the selflessness of other phenomena the object of negation of them can be more easily apprehended. Does that help, Jackie?
Yes, thank you so much, Venerable. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Hope to see you next week. I wanted to say also one of I keep on making it longer, but what may be worthwhile saying. Have anyone heard of Isaac Newton? Daniel, you read, you know who Isaac Newton was?
Sure.
So Isaac Newton, one of the great
Sure, I know.
mathematicians of all times. It said that when he was a boy, he was interested in understanding mathematics, and he read the famous huge book called Principia Mathematica. John, have you read Principia Mathematica?
He didn't read that. He wrote that.
Are you sure? Was it Principia Mathematica that he wrote? Okay, so there was a text that then.
That's what he wrote, yes.
Pardon?
He wrote that, yeah.
He wrote that. So the text that he had read as a youth was something that was precursor to that in his mind, something that was encyclopedic in nature. And he said that the first time that he read it, he didn't understand anything. But he had perseverance and he read it again. The second time he read it, because of connections that he'd made reading it the first time, he was able to start to make a little bit of understanding. Something that you read it something like 10 times. So, and eventually, as you corrected me, wrote the Principia Mathematica, great treatise on mathematics, became an expert in all of these details. So to try to think, although this text may seem difficult, and compared to some other texts that we can study about emptiness, this is relatively easy to understand, to read it again and again. Read the whole text every week. Even, you might think, oh, I read it, I don't need to read it again. You'll start to understand, make connections from our oral commentary and from other connections of the text. So I just wanted to mention that as encouragement.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Hope to see you again next week. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable
George.
George.
Thank
for
you,
your
Venerable George.
patience to stay.
Bye now. Bye all.
Thank you,
Take care.
Venerable.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
See you,
Bye.
everyone.
You.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Sunny.
You're welcome. Thank you.